how you doing? This is Johnny Silmon here from The Way, the Warrior Arts of Indonesia. As you can see, I'm in a little bit of a different location. I am actually away on location with a client and doing some other bits and pieces. So apologies if it's not the usual background and audio quality that I sometimes like. However, we do have another quality guest on the show today, which is episode 11 of the Warrior Arts podcast. And I'm very, very happy to have on my pal, fellow Silat, great experienced martial artist. This is Richard Killick. Rich, how are you, mate?
How are you? I see that you're looking alarmingly healthy again and looking good. Every time we meet, I'm always looking knackered, and you're looking.
But here's the thing, Rich. You have just come off, as you said, it's Saturday morning, Saturday the 6th of December, and you've just come off of a 3-hour teaching class.
Yeah.
So what I want you to do is just, obviously before doing like the formal introductions, is go into what you teach, like what you're teaching today, and then we'll just pivot back and forth and we'll just weave our way through.
Yeah, no, because it all connects up. No, that's cool. So this morning, so at 9 o'clock to the average class is about an hour. We have to split them up because people, although they're very similar. So this morning was an hour of sword and dagger, and today it's the first of the month, so we do sword. We were doing some distance drills actually, and then we did some close-in stuff. And then we take a 5-minute break, and we did an hour of Silat with a K. Silat with a K is from Ernest de Vries, that comes from our line. A lot of people will be familiar with that. Slightly different from perhaps some of the stuff you see in America, but same branch, different branches, that's all cool. And then the last hour is an hour of Sarah, which is more of the traditional looking Sarah that you'd be used to seeing, Johnny, in Indonesia. So again, we find that we have to split them, because there are 21 jurus in Sarak, and we're working our way through the Sarak jurus, and I think there's about 40 plus, and variations of everything, and A's and B's and C's, as you know. So and it's really good, and we are now cross-referencing it. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So what it sounds like you're doing, obviously you keep the art integral and true to their specific, so learning the art individually, but with those you're also, and again we will kind of unpack this a little bit further, it just gives an introduction in a slightly different way rather than saying, so how did you begin martial arts? It just gives it a little bit more context in that way. You've also done for a long time HEMA, which is Historic European Martial Arts. Is that something you've been doing for quite a long time? How did that
I actually, my first martial arts teacher was the local vicar, and the way that he used to get us 12, 13-year-olds to Bible class, so it's the Church of England, he said, okay, if you come to the Bible class, he went to Cambridge and he got a boxing blue, so he was a very good boxer. So he taught 2 classes a week. He taught boxing and he taught Western fencing. So I kind of did that in the 80s, very sort of early 80s, and I did it for a couple of years with him, and he's a very cool guy, because that's a cool way, because a lot of my friends and me, we didn't really want to go to Sunday school or go to that, so he did a cool thing, and also taught a few life lessons as well, so it made a big difference to all the local guys, and I'm still in touch with a few of them, and we still talk about it, so he did a good job. But I didn't, I kind of went the path of lots of people. I did lots of empty hand stuff. So I come from a family that's a boxing family. So I box. One side of the family are boxers, are from the south. The other side are from up north, Wigan, around that area. So they were very into wrestling, but not. The way that my granddad explained it to me was catch wrestling, or catch as catch can, is a kind of mode of wrestling, it's like what you'd agree to in a contest. So they had a regular Lancashire wrestling, which is brilliant, but you also, if you kind of went for a slightly different rule set, then that was catch as catch can. So when I was shown it, I didn't really like it, because when you're 12, 13, whatever, having your limbs pulled off, and it's right, it was rough, it's tough. I didn't really like. I like boxing because when you hit people, you can kind of see it, and you can also know it was more of a kind of instant feedback. So that was kind of what I was doing. Once it became clear that I was going into the army, well, I had two things that happened. The first one is my dad and my uncles. My uncle had lots of Rhodesian friends. He went to Rhodesia. There was a bush war going on at the time. A lot of those guys.
For our younger viewers, that's
Zimbabwe.
Now Zimbabwe.
So before it was Zimbabwe, they had a bit of a to-do, and they had quite a famous bush war. So these guys were very good. So when it became obvious that I was going to go in the army, one of the Rhodesian guys took me under his wing. He'd literally just come into the country and kind of train me, and I can talk a little bit about that later on if you want, when we get to kind of instincts and stuff, which I know ties in. I think we talked about it before. So I did that. I also got shown, my granddad was actually trained by Fairbairn and Sykes. He was actually trained by Sykes. And so he taught me some basic combatives. And again, I was more interested in the boxing, but the combatives, because he said if you're going in the army, you're going to drop into a trench somewhere, and there's going to be someone there. Inevitably, the gun jams. You're going to have to take care of it. And it was like kind of that mindset. So I did that. Whilst in the army, I was doing judo, and I shared a room with a guy from Manchester who did Muay Thai. He was one of the first he trained with Master Toddy. And he got me, I was literally holding pads for him for boxing. He kind of like, oh, can you hold these Thai pads for me? And then he would, like, okay. So we kind of did like an exchange, which is sometimes the way you learn the best. I did Muay Thai. I was, after Northern Ireland for a year and a half, I went to Gibraltar for about 6 or 7 months. There was a very good boxing gym in Gibraltar at the time, and a lot of the guys from Malaga used to come across for the boxing instruction and stuff like that. So I used to be in the boxing club, and I was by that time I was an assistant boxing coach. So back then you kind of had assistant and then a full boxing coach, so you had to go through this formal thing. So the army did all that, so I did it. So I was basically in a gym that was much better than you might think, much higher. We had a guy from the Kronk gym, which is a famous gym in Detroit, Thomas Hearns, people like that. He's the guy that trained me like a real so my friend sparred him first, and my friend was a bit cheeky, and he just got knocked spark out. So I'm in the corner, because you stand in the corner waiting for your turn, and so they go, okay, next. And he looked up at me, and as you know, I'm 6'6", and he goes, and I think he was like middleweight or something like that, but I was a beanpole really. But anyway, he said, listen, you can either mess around like the other guy, or we can spar and we learn something. And then I learned a lot from him, the fact that if anyone wants a reference, viewers, watch Thomas Hearns, Roberto Duran. Roberto Duran's an amazing, awesome guy, but watch that fight. Everything that happens in that fight, including the end knockout, is all pre-planned at the Kronk gym, and they just worked it, and you can see it. That's what it looks like. So that's what I was doing. Not as good as that. The Malaga guys.
Hold it there. Let me get a word in. We need to unpack some stuff here, because there's a lot there.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
No. There's a hell of there's so much content there. So, God, where do I even begin? So the first thing that is very, very apparent is that literally, genetically, you're talking about both sides of the family, you have been steeped in fighting arts, in warfare arts, in combat, the military. So essentially, that's been running through your blood fully, right?
Yeah. So, and it's not that I didn't have a choice, because I had a choice, but I chose to go down that path. I always knew I wanted to be in the military. I knew we had people in the family. So
let's just touch briefly on the military. You went in at what age, Rich?
So I joined just before 18. So I initially did all the exams to be in the Royal Engineers, and in the early 80s, I missed my slot because of my birthday is 23rd of August. I missed the slot for the college and there was also lots of people. So they said, okay, you can hang around till next year, or you can go into the infantry and then you can transfer. So I was like, okay, and I knew that I'd been in the Army Cadets, so I knew the local regiment. So I transferred to the local regiment, which was the Queen's Regiment. It's changed now, but that's what it was then. All three battalions were in Northern Ireland at the time, so we're talking 1984, 85 that I was in 86 a bit. So we knew we were doing 18, 19 weeks of training in Cambridge, and then it's straight over to Ireland, a quick 1 week course, and then you're walking around. I was on the borders in the countryside. I'd already been training, the sort of training wasn't actually so bad for me because I've been in the Army Cadets, and I've also been trained by these Rhodesian guys. So the Rhodesian guy sat me down and he said, okay, you hunt, right? I said, yeah, I live in the countryside, I've hunted, I've shot everything up from bunny rabbits all the way up to, I shot deer and we ate it and stuff. So I'm used to that. So he said, okay, what you've got to understand is you're hunting, war's about you're hunting people and they're hunting you, and there's a feeling, right? So we may cover it later on, but the sort of stuff that he did, we'd go out into the woods. He said, okay, sit on this log, just sit here, and I'm going to sneak, just sit here and chill out, and I'll be alert, sort of alert, and I'm going to sneak up on you, and you turn around or point to me when you find me, right? And so I sit there on the log. You know, I wasn't a slouch. I'd been in the cadets and stuff, so I kind of knew what was going on. So the guy goes away, I'm sitting there, and then you start thinking about things and thinking, that's a nice day, well, at least it's not raining. And I suddenly realised the guy was breathing down the back of my neck, and he just puts his hand on my top of my head, and it's like a tap, and he just goes, you're dead. You got to switch on. Go again. So it was that kind of stuff. It was kind of, it was interesting. Yeah, it was a bit more than people, it wasn't just shooting and it wasn't just tactics and stuff. It was a bit more, this is what it takes, mate. So if you're going to do it, you better start.
Was that kind of stuff taught like during basic training, or were these things that were like fieldcraft and sort of, you know, let's say clandestine kind of warfare and mindset that comes just with people's experience and stuff like that?
People's experience and understanding, being a hunter, you're hunting humans, they're hunting you, that kind of thing. It's slightly different. So you wouldn't get that when I was doing basic training. You didn't get any of that. I mean, you got basics. I mean, I'll give you a good example. When you're out in the field and you're going to lie up for the night, let's say, the Rhodesian guy said to me, okay, you're going to go into those trees, right? So you go past the trees and then you double back and you set up in the trees. You're setting up for the night. And so when I was in training, my training corporal goes, you've gone past, Killick, you've gone past where we're going. Like, you made a mistake. I said, no, I'm going swinging around, corporal, you know? And he's like, well, why are you doing that? So that we can sit there and we can look at the track that we just come along, because people track you and they go past you and you've got them, right? So you see them. Whereas if you just go straight to your little nest, they walk right up to it, especially if you're dozing or whatever. So it was a slightly different thing, but it comes from experience, and they, you know, were very good, very good.
How, in terms of like the basic training that you did in the army, you said it was like 19 weeks or so. What proportion or how much was spent on kind of any unarmed combat, and what did that look like, you know, in terms of like knife attack defense, hand to hand? What was that like, and what were your experiences with that?
Nothing. So you don't do anything. What they do is what they call aggression training, but it's linked to, or then it might be different now, it's linked to bayonet training. So the typical format for bayonet training day is, I say, okay, mate, I'll see you, get up at 6, I'll see you at 7. Okay, so this is what happened to us. So they said, okay, so my training course, so we just all got ready, eventually go to bed, and at 4:30 in the morning, the door opens and a flashbang comes in, bang, everybody has to get up, you get 5 seconds to like get dressed or whatever, and then grab your rifle and your bayonet, and then you're basically messed around for the next 3 or 4 hours, just like doing, like running around, holding things up, you know, like going through the water obstacle course, there's ice on it because it's February, you're doing that kind of stuff. Just anything to hack you off, you know, and just make you feel like life's not worth living. Lots of shouting, lots of press ups, do it again and do it again. And then you come round the corner and all the training posts there. Their bags, their sacks, big sacks, and they fill it. You don't know at the time. They fill it with offal from the local abattoir, and then they say, okay, stab this thing with loads of aggression. You stab it, loads of stuff comes out, goes all over you, you know, and like that. Back, next one, and they kind of do that kind of thing. They do stuff like, okay, you're firing, you're on the live range. This is just basic. So you're there, you're firing away at some targets. Your gun stops because you fired whatever 20, 30 rounds that you've got in your magazine, and they go, okay, what are you going to do now? And they're kind of very much on you, like pick up a brick, use your weapon, use your knife, go and kill him. But there is no like, okay, this is an angle one, and when you do this, you might latch it. There's none of that at all. You don't get any of it. None. You go to islands, you get how to restrain people because you are helping to arrest people. So when I was there, we got taught specialists. You know, you lock people up, handcuff them, and then you hand them over.
And how, like, would you say, like, applicable for all of those sort of soft and hard skills that you'd learn in the training, and then as a soldier, would be, do you think, transferable to like everyday life? Because we see what life is like outside now. Knife crime is through the roof in the UK, where you are. You're just the south of London, and it's getting more hostile and more hostile. You see, I've had conversations with other people that, aside from the actual physical aspect of martial arts, there's a whole element of psychology and pre-fight that really, people need to be equipped with in order to fully survive. It's not just that moment of engagement, it's the whole fight before that. How do you, with all of your experience, or do you kind of teach that element of it to your guys as well? What's your take on that?
Yeah, and you're not going to like this because I know we talked about it once before, but so I can teach the traditional postures that you will see in Silat, okay? And just on this, so I teach Sarag, and I can teach just the traditional stuff. I teach off the fence, so Jeff Thompson's fence from the 1980s, managing distance. In the army, I worked for a small military unit or special military unit, SMU they call them. I had to do a lot of face-to-face. They call it managing contacts. What it is, it may be that you and I meet in Valencia, we meet in a bar, we know each other. That's fine, that's one. We also, I might have known of you, but never met you in person. I might say I'm in Valencia. You and I say, let's meet at that bar. That's also a way of managing it. So I was doing we were part of this was slightly separate from the army, but we were part of a peace process, which was trying to get both sides talking to each other and talking to us. So that's quite tricky because you're going to people that don't like you. They see you as the oppressor, and you're going like, okay. So I had an MI5 handler. I worked with him. We would go and meet people in car parks, places like that. There was no QRF or backup force coming together. So there was me and him, necessarily so. And so you kind of learn to assess things. You look at situations. So I pass all of that on, along with the fence, to my guys. That's the first thing I teach, because you can be awesome as a martial artist, but you can be overwhelmed. You can be overwhelmed. So I teach that, and it does go in a circle, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But basically, how to deal with people, how to meet people, how to, especially face to face, how you might sit, where you might be. Everyone goes, sit in the bar and look towards the door and everything like that. Well, you can go into a bar and you can spot the guy that's kind of tactically set up. I have an American mate. Whenever I meet him, I know exactly where he's going to be because he'll be covering both exits. He's got he understands his lines of fire and all that. And I walk in and I just walk up to him and he's like, oh, okay. I said, wait, you're sitting where I would sit if I did that. So he's like, okay. So I said, you just got to sit off to the side or something or other, and you can't walk around all the time role playing or war gaming, but you should be aware. If you're aware, then you can leave. Okay, not so easy on the trains, as I found out recently, but if you're in an area or in a bar or wherever, a restaurant, you can actually leave. You become aware of it, a vibe, a feeling. Once you have some experience, and let's face it, lots of us are getting experience of dealing with people, you can kind of sense it, right? Silat training,
which we'll
we'll get to
definitely
it. But, I
we'll
will talk
definitely
about
get to that, because it's an important part
yeah,
of rasa and all of these other
yeah.
elements of feeling, how one can develop that. But just very quickly before we start delving into a little bit deeper, unpacking some of the Silat that you've done over the years, you mentioned, which was quite interesting, that they'd filled, I think it was with the army, that they'd filled the sacks up with offal and you were to attack it and then it all spill over you. A lot of times I see martial arts instructors showing knife and cutting, and this is how you cut ways, and you cut and pull it open and so forth. The reality is, the brutal reality, I think, is that the majority of normal, sane people would not even be prepared to kind of see the horrors of having to open someone up, the trauma of maybe having to gut someone if it came down to it, or cut their throat, or stick a knife through their eyes if it was for their survival. People could do it at a push, of course, but the level of kind of where you're just normal everyday people, and it's almost, I think sometimes it's over glamorized. Oh, we can cut this way, we can cut this way, without really realizing there's a horror to damaging someone in such a way. And in the UK, with our laws here, which are not like the USA, that, you know, obviously with guns and with knives and so forth like that, how can kind of weapons training, blade training, be trained in a way that obviously, you know, it's never reality, and when it's never really happening. But how can we slowly get to a point where, you know, there's not only skill with it, but also an understanding of the law, the trauma that it could cause you as well for inflicting certain kind of damage to someone?
Well, that's a long one. So here we go. So the first thing is, if you're going to do that kind of level of violence to people, you can be coaxed in the right direction. The military training is very much to coax you to do, you know, assertive, immediate action violence, you know, get stuck in. Okay. So you come out, you're on leave, you're in a bar, you know, you get into some tussle with some guy. If you follow the military doctrine, which is to, you know, disable, whatever, then you're going to go to jail. I've had a few friends that happened to, because they couldn't make the distinction. There is a big thing about training. So if you just use blade, okay, it takes I'm in two minds about this, and I'll explain why in a minute. And there's two counter arguments. So the first argument is, if you're going to stab someone, that's not a normal human thing. You'll notice that people that are attacked, they're not angry when they get attacked. It's just normal people walking around. They're not martial artists, not anything. They're just walking around. They're nice people. They get attacked. The anger comes post-trauma. I deal with some people that have suffered trauma like that. My ideal is you come to me before you get traumatized, but I've been specializing that, and it's very, very tricky working with psychologists and stuff. I went to a weekend retreat, and I was expecting people that these people had already had awful things happen to them, just awful things, right? Normal everyday people. So I go to the retreat, they want me to teach them self-defense and contact management, which I was happy to do, gave my time up for free. And I thought that they would be quite timid and quite, you know, like in shell shocked. And the reverse was true. They're actually really aggressive, because it had happened to them. They'd seen the depth that human beings will go to. And they have this sort of anger, and a lot of their questions to me over lunch and stuff were, okay, I'm really disappointed in myself that I got kind of, you know, overwhelmed. And I said, but you're not it's not an environment that any of us are in, and, you know, so you've got to really understand, train that, and to a certain extent provide a certain amount of pressure. Now, if people are traumatized and they've been attacked, when I'm teaching them scenarios, like, you have to be very careful about how much kind of aggression and talk that you push people for. So a lady said over lunch, she said, you should listen to Richard, because when I play the role of the bad guy, okay, I'm interviewing you, I'm going to attack you. It's an interview, you want to fail, right? So, and the lady said, the way that Richard moves, the way that Richard talks, that was what my attacker did. That he moves in the same way, the same sort of deceptive way. He got close to me. By the time I realised, too late. Even though everything about it was screaming, stay away from this guy, move back, give this. But we're very polite, right? Someone stops and asks you for the time, you go, oh yeah, and then you get sick. So there's that side of it. The actual, you see all these videos where the guy's doing, has 7 or 8 knives and deploys them, and this is where sometimes the military guys can get it slightly wrong as well, because the military context is totally different to your use of firepower, your use of force, totally different. And when they sometimes train policemen, that also goes awry as well, because they bring the military context to LEO training, and you suddenly got SWAT teams that really just go bang very, very quickly when they don't need to, and all that sort of stuff. So there's that. To actually do it is horrible. Is absolutely horrible. You can do it and get away with it, but it will catch up with you at some point. I don't know anyone that's killed, like in the military or whatever, that at some point it hasn't caught up with them, right? Because we're not really, we'll do what we do to survive, but it's a primal instinct, but we're not really, that's not the way we are built, it's not the way we're set up anymore. And so when I see lots of people, and they normally shout a lot, and they, I just kind of like, okay, no, we're not going to do that, although we're able to. Now, why you might train that, and why you might get an understanding of it, is that you need to understand how you're going to be attacked. So you need to know that, and then you need to build on a feeling as well, and there needs to be intent in training. And that often is lacking. So you see people feeding, but they're not trying to actually, if you use a training knife, they don't try and stab. So if you watch my videos and my guides, they try and stab me. And we know that the basic defences that we teach can be overcome by, particularly that Spanish knife stuff. That it's not like one of these, everyone goes, oh yeah, Spanish knife, it's this kind of thing, and this is nothing. This is just a tool. It's just a thing that you have, that you're not. That's not what's dangerous about the system. The danger with the Spanish system is the mindset, right? And
we'll get into it.
We'll get
into it, Rich. We'll get into it, right?
And the reason I keep mentioning it is because everything tracks back and will go around in a circle. The things that I initially just thought, I'm going to sidestep that and go and hit pads, I now realise the same point. So when I taught sword this morning, there wasn't a cut that we punch cut it in. There wasn't a cut that wasn't trying to cut. Simple as that. So we're trying to train it. Can you actually simulate? It's very hard. Even with weapons simulation rounds, it's actually very hard, because Johnny shot me straight between the eyes. Bad day for me, but it was a simulation round. Yes, it hurt, but you don't have that fear, and you're not working. You're trying to basically create an atmosphere where you're working with the intent, and you're letting your body do it with your mind all interlocked, 360 in. So Joe Civilian doesn't have that. Someone comes along, they maybe got their hand in their pocket, they think, knife. We have to kind of get around. That's a big barrier. There is another counter argument. Sorry if this is going everywhere, but this is the counter argument, right? So people will tell you, it has to be a life training, true, it should be. You have to have intent, true. You have to do like full contact drills and everything like that. Well, it helps, and it helps with fear, but you don't have to, because there are many grannies and people in the world that got attacked and they deployed the bread knife or whatever, and it's not some flashy knife, they employed a bread knife and they succeeded. And there's plenty of people out there that survived as well that had no training, and your mindset and you just do or die mindset actually makes a thing. In the army, they say, okay, if you go to sniper school, I wasn't a sniper, but I got told this, but also know it's true. You do your training, you go out to the battlefield, Johnny pops his head up, you shoot him, dunk, gone. That's number one. So you now go, well, I'm now a sniper. And the sniper school goes, no, you're not. You're not a sniper until you kill Johnny's friend the next day, because you go home and you're sitting there and you're thinking about it, and you get an intimate relationship with these people that you're killing. You find them maybe for a couple of days, you're tracking it. So now when you kill the second one, they go, okay, you're now a sniper. Okay, so that's a kind of like a wife's tale, but it seems to bear true. Lots of people can do it. They think they can, and lots of people think they can. And actually, what was it about Vietnam, about weapons unfired? You know, things like that. And in the Second World War, they did studies and people didn't fire their weapons, even though you've done that very basic training all the time. When the time came for me to do it, I didn't have a choice between 1 and 2, because the time between first and second person was like 20 seconds. So, and I had not killed anyone before that time, right? So I just shot targets, shot a few bunny rabbits and stuff, but I just done loads of rounds down the thing, but I never actually shot anyone. Okay? Guy, you know, we kind of collided, we came around the corner, guy's there, he's already engaging me, bang, bang, gone. I go past him, his mates come around the corner already kind of firing, bang, bang. Okay, go around the corner, reload, whatever. So my time between 1 and 2 was, you know, now, do I walk round and see those people, you know, do I think about them dream? No, I don't. I just was on autopilot. But if I get really tired, one time I was at Bob Breen's Academy in the 80s, and I'd done like 12 hours on a construction site, and then I had a shower, went to Bob's, did a couple of hours with, you know, Gary Derrick, don't you? I think you know Gary. Did a couple of hours Gary's Thai class, which, you know, was so, you know, it gets to about 9 o'clock. I'm at Old Street Tube, and I'm absolutely knackered. I'm just, you know, just dead, you know, and I just want to go home and go to bed. And then I looked across, and it had a plain walls then, and I started to see people, like an hallucination, and it was people that I'd kind of shot. So I was kind of like, this is not good. But that's the only thing I've ever had.
Yeah.
And but
maybe your training and just your mindset and so forth have helped to keep you kind of anchored and grounded.
But I've got, especially in the last 20 years, I've got a lot of friends that are they suffer, you know, you're trying to get a balance back, and it ties in with when people used to go to war. They used to do a pre-ritual, right? They used to go to war. When they came back, they had to rejoin the small community that they were in, so they would perhaps do something else to just come back to being just a normal human being, you know. And
hold it. Let's talk about Silat.
Okay, yeah.
First of all, right, because that stuff is heavy. It's big stuff, and it's like, you know, we don't need to bring up any more about that, Rich. So let's talk about what probably the majority of people are always, when they tune into my channel, they're interested in people that are teaching Silat or have even touched on it. But you've been involved in it for a long time. Rich, take us back to when you first heard about Silat and your first kind of training with it, and then how you progressed into the Serak and Sera and so forth. Take us back to that point, Rich.
Yeah, sure. So I hadn't really seen much Silat. So if we're talking about 86 or something like that, I hadn't really seen much Silat at all. I'd heard some things, and I'd met people on seminars and things like that, and I used to go to some of the JKD seminars. So people used to talk, but at that stage nobody really saw it, and then what happened was, there was a couple of things that happened. First thing was, I was coming back from training on a bus, and I saw a bus driver, and he had a real massive problem with some people trying to get on and not pay, and kind of one of the things he seemed to do was, like, he basically wrenched the guy's arm that tried to grab him, and I was talking to him because I was coming to help him, and he said, oh yeah, I do this Malaysian, so you wouldn't be interested in that. And he said, and actually, to be honest with you, it's not really open to you, it's like a closed door thing. But we chatted a little bit about it, so I was like, okay. I was like, well, that guy kind of, he's only a little guy, but he kind of really, that's interesting sort of thing. So I was like, okay. When I went to Bob Ring's Academy, they used to do those weekends where you'd have Guru Richard Du Bois, you'd have Gary teaching Muay Thai, and Bob or Terry Barnett, someone, teaching it, so you got like an idea of what it would be like. So I met Richard, and although I'm not 6'6", isn't great for bouncing,
yeah, 6'6", you are, Rich, yeah.
Yeah, but he was really, and so some of the drills that he did were very interesting. So I kind of got into that. I went to the States in 86, 87, went to the Inner Santo Academy, did the usual thing, did some Kali, was quite happy, I think did something else. Anyway, long story short, at the end of the class, there's kind of people hanging around, and Guru Dan was there, and he just kind of said, oh, there's a guy coming in, you might want to see this, Richard, because it might be interesting to you. And that was Paul Dutois. So this is before Pendacardius or Guru there. He was just, it's Paul or whatever. He came in and I was chatting to him, and he kind of did a short demo, and I was like, I've never seen anything like it. I was just kind of like, okay.
What year would that have been, Rich?
86 or 87.
86 or 87. So would he have been in his 50s at that point?
Yeah, he at that time, the kind of timeline, I'm not in that branch anymore, but the timeline I always use. So at that point, I got some training with him, and he was teaching Sirach. So he said, this is Sirach, this is it. And then I think I came back in 87 or 88, whatever the next year was. He said, oh, there were 18 Jews, but now there's 8. There's this thing called Bhakti Nagara. It's kind of a way of teaching Westerners, and it's a kind of more thing. You do that, and then you do Sirach. So I was like, oh, okay, we're doing that now. Gary also did some training with him, I think, about this point as well, Gary Derrick. So I kind of, looked at it, kind of love-hate relationship with it, because it didn't fit my Thai boxing. I was kind of like trying to make it, and there's a lot, different range. He did that famous thing, doesn't he, where he stands right in front of you, chest to chest, and he says, do something. And you're like, and you go to step back to and of course he's got you, and the way that he explained his system to me was, he said he came and he looked, people had kickboxing, they had trapping from like Jun Fan, Lee Jun Fan, and they had some kind of at the end of all the trapping, the headbutts, knees and elbows, they kind of do like a Tai Chi throw, that kind of stuff. So he knew he had a unique way of manipulating and trapping the whole body, and also he knew that sweeps and things like that were kind of going to be his unique selling point, if you like. So that's the way. He didn't really teach so much what we would call pukulan, hitting so much. He'd say punch and all that sort of stuff, but he didn't really. When I was there, everyone has different opinions and probably had different training, but he didn't emphasise it. So when I came back to the UK, I trained with Dave Carnell, who was trained by Kaz Magda, and I was a private student, so I was eventually allowed to teach it. But again, it was very much along the lines of the Bhakti Nagara at that point. I kind of felt like there was something behind it, but I couldn't. I asked a teacher once, what about in Holland, where these guys came from Holland? Yeah, there's a large Dutch community. And I was like, surely there's a load of great guys over there. No, it's not. It's really kind of died out there. And if you turned out, they'd say, no, there's no, there's no Sirach here. Which is a shame, really, because I wish I'd gone. So I kind of had it, I taught it, and it went well. I started to get into mixed martial arts and coached that, and did a lot of grappling. And I kind of put it to one side, but I always had this thing, I thought, I'd like to go back, but maybe a slightly different look. I met a lot of Silat people, and they had some really cool stuff, and I was kind of like, that's really cool, that's Sawunda guys and stuff like that. And there was always this kind of, there's bits you look at it and you go, I don't understand that at all, and there's bits of it you go, no, that's really cool, and you're always kind of looking, I met a Chamundi guy, and he's like, crunch, crunch, crunch. I'm thinking, God, yeah, no, that's cool. Straight away, like, okay, yeah, we're all sitting here, cross-legged, and I know you know all about this much more than I do, but I was like, okay. So I just put Silat on a back burner, hurt my back a bit, did some full contact stick fighting with the Dog Brothers. Kind of 2005, I just thought, you know what, I've done my public teaching, and I think I'm just going to chill out with some friends, did some combative stuff, did some bits and pieces, and I think Pendlecar Paul came like 2011-12 to the UK, and I thought, my friend said, "Oh, let's go to the seminar because it'd be good." He's a funny guy, and he is funny, and he was an interesting guy. So we went along, and he said, "Yeah, I'm trying to grow it," and he said, "You know, you can be a group leader." I wasn't really my thing. I was teaching the garage and stuff. I didn't really want to teach public lessons classes, but I did what I needed to do. But I couldn't. Again, I had the same problem. For me, it wasn't quite the, it's a flavour thing. It's nothing. Everybody has their own what they like, and Johnny, I'm not going to Indonesia to go into a river to do frozen stuff in a river, right? I look at those pictures and they look really cool with Ed and all those good Eds, and I might be different if I went and I did it and stuff like that. But I'm like, this is probably not going to be for me. But anywho, via that network, I met Gilvan Van Ham, who's the son of what we call him Mr. Van Ham because that doesn't cause any problems. But he was a direct private student of Ernest de Vries, and through that, almost like chatting with no expectation, I said, and he said, "Look, if you come over to Amsterdam, or I'll come over to the UK, I'll show you some stuff." And I'm like, "Yeah, but isn't it ultra secret?" And all that. He said, "Well, no, we're just trying to keep it kind of, sensible, normal people." So our credo, if you like, motto and our thing is just be normal, just be a guy that does something that they really like. Don't start going with these massive long titles and start getting an ego. Just be normal, be normal, be nice, be kind, and that's it. So I got to train with him. I was so bad that his dad wasn't really taking students at that point.
Who was his dad? Who was
Uti Van Ham. So he's one of the best Silat players I've ever seen. Like kind of, just awesome.
From a Silat lineage, yeah.
Yeah, and a private closed door student, and a guy that can really put, and it looks different, and it is slightly different. It's a different branch. His emphasis.
So Rich, when did you begin sort of like your travels to Holland? Because I remember you and I, and quite a number of years ago, having a discussion, and you were quite, I can't really talk about it much kind of thing. I was like, okay, I understand. It's like that sometimes. So when did you begin going, and then what was the training like? How did it differ from perhaps what you were doing with Pendlecar Paul, just in terms of, because there's obviously a unique relationship and connection with them, but obviously, like everything, things can sometimes just go off and look somewhat differently. So what was that like? What were the similarities? What were the differences in terms of how you felt mechanically?
That's very good, good question, because the first thing is, when I went there in 2015, and when I went there, I realised that everybody knew everybody in this community, and the thing about, at that time, I think we met in 2000, and I was saying, look, they sat me down and they said, and I give this talk to all of my students, which actually has some pros and cons, but I just say, look, be nice, be kind, just enjoy it, train hard, okay. Sarah is very important to them, okay. It's not just bashing people. It is partly, yes, you need to, if you need to, you do, but there's a lot more to it, and it's part of their culture. Right, and I think that's the Indonesian side of the Dutch-Indonesian. It's very important that you don't kind of go online and start being nasty to other Silat. It's that brotherhood, sisterhood thing that you always talk about, that I know you kind of educated me on. You said, because I remember you telling me, we had lunch, you said, "Rich, relax."
It's very important. It's essential,
Yeah. So people will have their own opinions, what they like. It always comes down to personal preference and your time and the context. So that's great. I like lots of different Silat systems. So the first thing I realised was there's a lot of great people that no one ever heard of from a lot of great systems. Chickalong, I've seen some Chickalong stuff, and I'm like, wow, right? Like really good. I've seen some Sarah people that are, older gentlemen and stuff, and some ladies, and they are unbelievable, and you never heard of them, and they want it that way, and they're not taking people, and that's fine. And then the group was a very family orientated group, but some outsiders as well, and some of them been together for 20, 30 years studying. Okay, so if you're going to go to a group in Holland in your teacher's living room, and you're going to go along and you're going to maybe like throw a low high jab and then maybe think you're going to get away with doing like a takedown and maybe some MMA, you're in for a big surprise. But it's not like that. It's actually, they work with you, and as I said, my nickname is, I think it probably still is the elephant, because Paul was very much like stomping, and they're like, why are you doing that? Relax, like this, and then when the way that and I think you've had some experience of this as well. The way that it's taught is, I watched Gilvan, and I couldn't see, to Keith and to Pack and Salute and all these, and I'm looking at it and it just goes, and I'm like, okay. And then the way that it's trained is, I really got interested in how is it trained. I was like, okay, so why is it the end product looks so different to me? Why is it they make it look easy? And more importantly, how are they training it? And all these things that I'd kind of like, traditional stuff, that's really important. Getting up, getting down on the ground, even if you're in a system that's quite a bit of stand-up in it, is really important. The body can do, I know some of your previous guests, and Kai and stuff, were talking about this. That kind of fit, that movement, which is quite unique. Would you say I think it's quite unique to them. I think, Johnny, would you? I think it is.
What's that? What
the way that they move, the way the Indonesians move, and
well, I think it's kind of literally born out of mechanics, of tradition, of culture, of a lot of times where these systems are born in villages. They have low squatting toilets. They're in jongkok position, which is a squatting position where they're sitting talking to friends. It's heat, the bodies, just the hips, the ankles, the knees, everything is given towards so they're comfortable in these positions. Most people in the villages might not have kind of sofas, so they'll sit on the floor. So there's this constant kind of loose movement that they've got within their hips. So getting into these kind of sepok positions are probably super easy,
When I went to Guru Elvin's class, a couple of workshops with him, and did it. I was in my 50s then, and I had injuries as well. But the next day, I felt connected in a way that I hadn't felt for a long time. And I realised, I'm like, hang on a second, I'm missing something here. And so going back to in Amsterdam, and so you meet the family. We have a saying in our group, you'll like this, there is no Sarak or Sarah without food. I invented that because their food is so you do the training, and also they're very, you can ask any question you like, and they're very honest. They're very like, oh, this Chikalong guy, like us, he was around in the 70s. He was so good. They're very like, is the guy good? Yes, it doesn't matter what's he's like. That's a great guy. Really like that guy, and he can really teach well and all that sort of stuff.
This is just holding the point, Rich. That is to the point, showing like Silat Urami, because it really saddens me when there is such a this is what we do, such a territorial, this is our thing, we're the, you know what, guys, you're missing the point. It should be kind of like we all get together and we do something different, but Silat is our common thread. We're all Pesilat, you see. And, that's why we exchange and share. And it's kind of like supposed to be almost like as much as possible, an egoless environment so that there's exchange and there's knowledge and understanding. But unfortunately, over the years, things, especially when there's kind of maybe big money, if it's a big teacher and they're earning, it's like people want to be the gatekeepers. This is why I've done the very opposite and said to people, go to Indonesia. I'll hook you up with a teacher. You go, you don't need me. Go there yourself, have the experiences yourself, find your way and stuff like that. And I think it's so empowering for people. So back to you.
Yeah. And also you're my go-to guy when I can't pronounce something, because I can't pronounce English very well anyway. So when I come along and you're like, no, it's Penchak, Silat, or whatever it is, I know you're going to hate that, but you're the guy that goes, no, Richard, it's this. And you go, oh, okay, right. Khalid. What happened? So I was just blown away by this, and I could see there's a method, and I realised, okay, I'm going to need people to train with in the UK, because you get judos and you get lankers, and you can do a lot of your own personal training, but you need people. So I started Cora really as a research thing to say, this is how I'm being taught. Can I now share it in a group setting, just low profile, with guys, and what happens, what's the end result? And the end results were really good. So I was like, okay.
So just as a point, just holding the point for people, Kora, K-O-R-A, stands for Killick Offroad Arts. And that's kind of like Rich's, I say organisation, but just your kind of an extension of who you are. It's essentially is what it is, Killick Offroad Arts. It's a number of different arts, things that you've studied over the years, the Spanish styles, the wrestling, the Silat, some of the Filipino martial arts, and just that whole point of research, of study, giving out good information, and obviously teaching.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, so and that's how it came about, really. And so we'd get Gilvan over once, twice a year. We would go over, and we started to produce people. So I think we have there's James, there's Shin. There's someone else as well that I can teach now. So we are now, it's going, and we're always looking. I'm always looking at new ways of teaching it, but I need you to understand how they teach it, because there's a beautiful thing. It is, if you take away the fact that you may be putting your elbow through someone's head at some point if you're defending yourself, actually it's a beautiful thing, and that's probably the best thing. And they have Dutch people have the same sort of sense of humour as us UK guys, Brits. So there is that kind of thing, Indonesians, and they're nice people, and it kind of, that's the feeling. And if you can get one thing from today is like, be cool. When you meet people at barbecues and things like that, and they start talking about in 1955 when they started learning, a Silat system you never heard of, and you say, oh, and say, yeah, look, it looks like this, and you're like, okay, they go, yeah, come over, for, come round and have a cup of tea, and I'll show you some, I've got some videos, and I've got some.
I mean, there's been, to your point, there's been some absolutely tremendous Silat teachers in Holland. Obviously, the connection is clear for everybody to know, the Dutch-Indonesian connection, and. I've got fond memories of my late teacher Guru Ma, and there were great teachers like Pachi Peffercorn and many older
nice guy.
So many older generations that sadly are not around anymore. But then through their students, there's just a wonderful connection. It's quite magical going over there and just being with the people and having that experience. I don't know how you get there plane. I used to go later on by plane, but wonderful people, and super skilled. And Silat is thriving in different kinds of aliran and schools, perguruan in Holland, all over really. So you can get it from literally all over the country. It's not a huge country. But very quickly, Rich, I wanted to know, just, and again, this isn't to say, oh, this is better or worse, just from a purely like mechanical and experiential point of view, how did you see the difference in terms of structure of judos, maybe methodology of training from what you had done with the Serak to the Sera? How did that differ? And where were the similarities?
Okay, and again, everyone has their certain, I'm not going to sit on the floor with Johnny and let him chimundi me to death with his.
Well, Rich is when I stand next to Rich is 6'6".
Yeah, but I'm not sticking
lucky.
this.
I'm lucky to be 5'6" on a good day. So
when we're sitting down and you're, doing what you need to do.
Yeah, but if you're at range, Rich, I can't even get close to you anyway. So
well, interesting. I'll tell you something else in a minute. But so what I noticed was, I think this is it was more, and again, it's my opinion. So I found it more flowing. I found that their intention is very much for, like, you're walking down the street, someone happens to jump you, that's what it's for. It's not for getting into sort of a cage and fighting and stuff like that, although they used to, when you look back at the 1920s and stuff, in the 30s where they've got films, these days, if you're going to boxing, they have like a, you have your DJ hits your sounds and you come out to the boxing. That's great. But even back in the 20s and 30s, they had the drums and everything like that. And certain systems had certain like sounds. So you'd come into the square or the circle and you do some moves to show who you are, and then you do some sort of competition and stuff. Could be friendly, maybe not. Who knows? So I found that they were very practical, very flowing, amazing power. We were doing power testing this morning, which is basically testing basics and just making sure that there's no problems, and you can hear it and you're relaxed. Very relaxed. It looks really beautiful. It looks really nice. They have 21 gurus. I think Paul in the Silat originally had 18. The way that it progresses in the gurus is very like it. You go here, you go there, you go here, you go there. One teaches this, two teaches that. Maybe three teaches you something that Potong or something that cross-references back to one, and it all kind of backs each other up. The lanker and the footwork is to get you into position, and then there's drills, and obviously there's hitting and application stuff and everything. So very cool. Treated seriously. Okay, it's very important to them. So you have that kind of, okay, we're not, we're here to study. You're expected. It can make your brain explode because people, as I said, people show stuff and variations and all this sort of stuff. But it's designed so that you find that as well yourself. So I can't teach you 26 versions of like some applications from Gurus 1, but I can give you the core, and then you will go, oh yeah, I can do that. I can do it on the left, do it on the right, high, low, near, far, and all of that. So that is a thing. Good base. Yeah,
so, Rich, at what point were you given like permission, if you like, because I remember there was a point, I think it was a year or two ago, I can't remember exactly, but you became more public with it, where it was kind of like, you'd kept it quiet. So when were you giving the blessing, if you like, to kind of say, okay, you can extend it and open it a bit more? What was that like?
Yeah, so initially when I met, they kind of said, you can ask any questions, we're very open. I said, look, just be cool, it's brothers and sisters and stuff, be nice. Please don't, get involved in anything on the internet or anything. Just be nice to people. If you don't like them, just keep away from them. Keep a low profile. Please, just be cool. So I think I was like a road tester, because they're like, okay, people can be cool and they're not suddenly teaching it online or suddenly got massive long titles and things like that. And then a couple of years ago, our teacher Gilvan decided that he would be a bit more open, and I think he's done workshops in Italy and places like that. And
yeah, he's incredible. I've seen so much of his material, and he's just like a nuclear bomb explosion, speed, flow, brilliant. I love it.
And I'd love you to meet him, because I think you'd really get on. He's always researching. He's always cross-referencing. He trains with a lot of guys that aren't with us sadly anymore, but he has an amazing knowledge, and he's quick. The training kind of equips you to pick stuff up and really get a feel for things and really understand it and get it in your body, because that's what you've got to do. So he kind of relaxed a bit. He thought, okay, as a group we're moving forward, let's do that. He allowed some other people in my group to teach. Brilliant. And so we are kind of like that. Now, we don't have a public venue at the moment. That's mainly because I'm not really up for public venues anymore. I've done a lot of that. Other people are welcome to do it though. And we want people to experience it so they can go, okay, I like that. These are the bits, that's it. So that's what changed. They started going on the, doing YouTube things so people can see. And again, it's all done from, you're seeing what I got taught, so there was no kind of like, we show this outside and we, that. No. You see him. That's how it works. And
that's right. What I really like also about some of the videos that he's posted is he references Gillivan. He references back to some of the older teachers. You get in like some of the old judus, which is really, to see some of the older generations, 1, 2 generations up, going through their judus and stuff, and then aplikasi, all the application stuff, fascinating stuff, brilliant.
Yeah, and he, they go, him and his family go to Indonesia a lot, and they have a lot of connections out there. And again, some people like to stay low profile. Brilliant Sarah teachers and stuff. Other people, like, I've never been to Indonesia yet, but there are people out there that are just brilliant, but they just choose, they're just, it is what it is. That's
It's
fine.
what I always say, Rich. It's like there's lots of off the grid teachers, off the
Yeah.
grid. There's loads that are just not interested in kind of, for them, commercializing it or monetizing it particularly. They'll be very selective in who they'll teach. And then there'll be some cats who are the very opposite and set themselves up as like the be-all, one-stop, only gatekeepers and all of that. And, listen, live and let live. Everybody's got their place and their agenda and their thing, but there's something for everyone out there.
Yeah, and it is an art that literally has something for everyone. And as you change and you become aware of stuff, I mean, there is stuff that I'm doing now that when I first, like, people broached it back in the 80s, I'm like, why would you do that? It would be better just go and hit pads and stuff like that. And now I kind of understand it. And as you get older, you kind of, I'm in my 60s now, you realise this stuff is really important. I know that Kai was talking a lot about emotions and the up and down and some of the previous guests and stuff. It's really it's a gift.
Yes.
It really is.
And also, just from a point of view, very level, I spoke to this, I don't know if you saw the podcast I did with Guru Mark Young.
Yeah.
Mark's 70, and one of the elements of it Mark talked about, it was a really simple yet profound kind of bit of advice. He says, in terms of movement and longevity, get comfortable just sitting on the floor, because we're sitting at desks, we're sitting on sofas. Get comfortable sitting on the floor, which goes back to the point of, like, a lot of Indonesians, why they move in such a way is because they're so comfortable in that ground environment. And if you're just sitting on a floor, cross-legged, moving, just everything just begins to open up and it just becomes a little bit more subtle and so forth. But Rich, one thing I wanted to ask also as well, because it was something we touched on earlier, was a little bit of kind of like through your training, some of the, let's say, the sensitivity or the feeling or the awareness, the rasa, that you feel maybe that Silat training, and I'm sure, other arts have their kind of way of doing it as well. I know with Chinese arts, but obviously I know more so about the Silat, and just developing kind of like an awareness, almost like a precognition and a sense of when something is going to happen. Have you felt that with your training, those little elements have kind of heightened somewhat?
Yeah, you do. And if you're in our system, so we're very interested in the blade environment for lots of reasons. And I'll tell you something really funny. I worked on 20 years on my knife system. And I showed it to the Gilvan, and Gilvan goes, yeah, that's really good, that's really cool. He goes, that's in the first 9 Jurus, don't you? And I looked, I'm like, oh well, this is confirmation, right? So, but I was like, oh God, So with that kind of training and stuff, and because it's so quick, you have to develop senses. You have to let your body do what it wants to do. So the whole point, I used to get confused, and I used to be like, oh, that's not really for me. But what it really means is your body needs to be on almost automatic. Your body has this. The best way is like an antenna around you, and when someone approaches you, and maybe they're hiding a knife and stuff like that, your body will pick up on certain things, a certain way of walking. Maybe you can't see the right hand. A lot of guys in Pearly and stuff walk around with their hands in one pocket because it kind of signifies that they may or may not have a knife. So you're kind of, which is good for us because we can pin it and whatever. But the long of it, your body's picking all this stuff up. You don't know. You're walking along thinking about SpongeBob SquarePants or something like that, or what you're going to eat. Body's picking it up, so you become aware of it. But the training brings all this out. It's not probably as supernatural as people think. It's a natural occurring thing. You can do your whatever, your jurus, you can turn out the lights, do it in the dark, you can do it outside. It's always good to do it outside. You can do your lenkers, you can do drills with it in low light and things like that, and it will bring it out. You can use some of the sensitivity type drills. You can say, you know what, I'm going to play a bit softer today rather than just smash. There's different ways of to cut a long story short, there's different ways. You can do a suicide run, which is go straight down the guy's centre line, mush him. You can be off to a bit, and then it's the mixture of the soft and the hard, smash but also soft, and picking things up, feeling people's centre. You can just do that, balancing drills. You can do sumo drills where you push in and pull in and you feel people's balance. You find it in judo to a certain extent as well. So all of that comes into play. Some of the stuff I was talking about before with my Rhodesian uncle, whatever, that kind of ability to kind of appear and disappear, and it kind of looks like something super duper like super skills, but actually it's a learned thing. You all have it and you can do it. So there's that. There are other things that you can do. I'm not really that into them, but toughening things, and it depends on the context as well. But if you've got intent and you're aware and you let your body do the work, life gets a lot easier. You don't do Paul said to me, don't do martial arts for hard, like to make things hard. You do it to make it easier. So sometimes you do stuff and it just happens, and you're just like, okay, it looks just like it happened to look in Jews 5 or whatever, and
So Rich, do you continue to? Do you still take little trips over? Obviously, you have Gilligan come over to see you guys.
Yeah.
With that, so you're teaching essentially how you're teaching your guys there down in Purley is you're teaching them literally as you've been taught, so going through the judos, going through Lanka, going through application, etc.
Yeah, so I although I'm interested in how, like, playing with the way that things are taught and stuff, that I teach as I was taught, and it works really well actually. The things I play with is traditionally you do like warm-ups and stuff in the class and do some basics, and you do the complicated stuff that maybe your teacher wants to teach you. So this year we've been doing it the other way around, because I read a book from a Cirque du Soleil guy, and he said no, do the tricky stuff, the new stuff first thing, and then go back to the stuff that you know and stuff. And that translates really well. We do quite a bit with the sword stuff, which is in Serrara and in Serac and in the Illustrissimo and the Spanish stuff that we do. It's intent, okay? It's being aware. It's the hairs on the back of your neck. So I'm trying to replicate that so people understand. So that when they, as I said this morning, my guys did cuts on me for an hour and thrusts and things. They're trying to thrust me, and they're not doing things like, out here where you can see it coming a mile away and stuff like that. We might do a YouTube thing where just to show so people can see it, but actually they're trying to cut you. So when they do knives and things like that, they're doing all their stuff. Okay, so the intent's there. When the intent's there, you get the feeling. When you get the feeling, you start to feel at home. I had a really weird experience in February where a guy got on the train in Croydon. I was on the train. I was actually helping someone else that didn't speak English to find his way. So when I turn around, the guy's there, right? So I'm going to kill you, and he's like obviously got problems. I said, look, mate, I'm not interested. I'm actually going to a meeting with my student. It's just please, go away. So he goes off. He had a fight with the onboard toilet by himself. So I'm like, Okay. We know this because we've got the CCTV. He came back and he was. Basically, he's saying, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to stab you. He kept reaching, and he kind of looked like he had a knife. So I stood up, kind of fenced him off, held him at bay. At the next station, I got off, and he took a swing at me, and I kind of pushed him away with his head, which is like just a nice thing. He wouldn't go away. Then he started taking his clothes off, which is like, okay, this is in the middle of the day in Norwood Junction, right? So I'm like, okay, this is not going to be good. Lucky for me, some transport police were sitting over the road having a sandwich. They saw him. They came and arrested him. They restrained him. He went back to jail. He was on day release, or he was on release from jail. He got drugged up. Okay. The only reason I'm telling that, there's been a few like that, but the only reason I'm telling everyone that is nothing to do, you would expect me to be able to do with it, is the whole time I was dealing with him, I was totally calm. So he would say, I'm going to kill you now. He would reach in, and I was like, knife, no knife, knife, no knife. He'd come out like this, like he'd have a knife, but there was no knife there. So rather than haranguing him, I was like, look, mate, you haven't got a knife, just calm down. You know what I mean? That sort of thing like this. For the first time in my life, I was totally calm. I didn't actually feel aggressive towards him, but I was quite happy to push him out of the way if I needed to. That is a totally a thing about that is a trained thing that we're training for, that you can make clear things when there's total chaos. There's a guy there that is off his head, has some real problems, that he's going to attack. He was going to attack me, but he in the end I kind of controlled it. That's the thing that I couldn't do a couple of years ago. I would have panicked. I'd have asked him a question. I would have smacked him and kept going, and that's a totally different thing for me. And I came out of it. It's a really unpleasant situation. I had to go and make statements and all this sort of stuff. It wasn't great. And the police guy is saying, "Guy, you were so cool because you were backing away, but you fenced him up. He took a swing at you, but you didn't." We thought like, "Oh, there's going to be a ruck," and he's going, "You were just really pretty cool about it." And I just went. He said, "Have you been a bouncer and stuff?" I said, "Not for a long time," but I just said, the thing was, I felt okay within myself, whereas before, I'm quarter Irish, 5% Sicilian, used to have a temper, but not anymore. I'm just kind of like, okay, that's it. That's that training, and it sounds a bit woo-woo, but it's not. It's trainable. Training with weapons, right? It's a totally different thing. Weapons training will bring it out, and unfortunately, in the local environment, weapons is probably, it's likely that's what you're going to be facing, as you said at the beginning. And but you need a system that trains to deal with that, and that often is a tradition. In my experience with Illustrissimo and some of the Spanish stuff, is a system that has a history. And yes, they don't have videos. I mean, some of the guys in Spain that I've met, I met a flamenco guy in Cordoba, and he said, I said, I really like the kind of way, after the show, and I said, we were talking, I really like the movements, and it looks kind of unique. And he's going, oh yeah, and we were talking about knives and things like that, and he said, oh, this is not what I do, and I don't, because this is what my granddad used to do. Right, I actually put the video up on my website. He goes, my granddad used to get a knife, and it would disappear, and it'd come out, and it'd move, and it like within the, like really cool. Like he goes, this is kind of what it was. And I'm looking at it, it looks like Piper. You see, and I'm like, okay. And then there was another guy as well, and some of it is about a mindset, which a lot of people have, seem to be interested in Spain. And if you want to know kind of like what interests me is how can like someone that does say a flamenco, like a guitarist or a singer or a dancer, how can they be perfect? How can they hit the mark? How can they be just like flawless? What kind of mind have you got? What was the training? Well, the training actually looks a lot like Silat training, repetition, the feeling, the community,
That, Rich, is a conversation for another time.
Okay.
You're teaching a very small closed-door group. Are you open to taking new students, and how would you vet those students what's your process?
So we were closed door. We're not anymore. We actually, you can, some guys emailed me this week actually. So you just email. I know, I saw something.
I'll put just as a point, I'll put all your details in the description of the video so people can get hold of you. Yeah.
I know that some Silat teachers almost make it like an endurance journey to get into the training area. So we don't. I try and meet people, and I show them, and I answer their questions. I say, this is what it looks like. I give them the 10-minute spiel about, okay, be cool, be nice. We're all friends. It's kind of like a brotherhood or a sisterhood. We're here. We take it quite seriously, but also, it's informal in training. You're on your own volition, if you like. That seems to go down really well. People really like it. So I think in the past, because we were quite low profile, no one knew we were even existed, and part of that was planned, but another part wasn't. Now we're allowed to. I'd like people to see my teacher. I'd like people to see other teachers, and I like the idea of people getting together in gatherings. I think it's really good. I'd be happy to. I'm not really. It's not a monetary thing. It's not my job. I do it for the love of it. Like a lot of people do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Rich, anybody wants to get hold of you, as I said, I'll put all of Richard's contact details in the description of the video, and also at the end of the podcast, you'll see it as like one of the first things, there'll be his contact details there as well.
Thank you very much.
So
that's really cool.
a lot of topics we could have also got into, but I just really wanted for this one to go into a little bit of your history and then really kind of deep dive a bit more onto the Silat specifically. But stuff like all of the other stuff, the historic European martial arts, the Spanish systems. I mean, you are a bit of a walking encyclopedia of martial arts. You've been doing it for decades. So, you know, hopefully really another time and discuss a lot of things. Rich, any last words? Because I've actually got to go and see my client soon.
No, thank you for putting me. I know you really had to. Look, just because there's many different paths. I just find if you're cool, if you're nice, yeah. Sometimes you're just, like I said, you're at the barbecue around your teacher's house, and you start talking to a guy who's in his 90s or 70s, and you have this amazing experience and conversations, and you realise also you're like a nothing really, and this guy's control you straight away and stuff. So I just say, just be nice, be cool, be normal. Our thing is be normal, just, you know, and support people. I don't, you know, I'm not an expert on a lot of the other stuff. I know people that are, and I encourage them to go there. So if someone comes and says, oh, I kind of like a slightly different thing, then I say, okay, you might try this person, and you know, I know them, I'll have a shout. I send people to Elvin and Ash and people like that because they want that kind of, you know, thing. So that's how it should be. And if you do that, you get blessed. You really do. Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing. And you know, yeah.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Enjoy the weather.
Finally managed to get that kind of like time frame. So everybody, thank you, appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next one. All the best.
Thanks, mate.